You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside and outside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio. Welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast alongside Matt Adams. I calling in from a far distance away. I'm Dave Griffiths. Appreciate you all taking a quick break from your dynasties on NCAA Football 25 to join us here as we are 1 week away from opening up Colts training camp here in central Indiana. Our Mike Chappell plans to be back sometime in the near future, but right now we're still giving him a break until camp begins. We want him at full capacity, full go, 100% by the time the Colts get to Westfield and kick things off there. But we will talk plenty about some news around the NFL and the Colts first before we get to kind of these storylines that we've been touching on throughout the summer, but we'll give them a little bit more of their due right now as camp's about to open. That'll be kind of the meat and potatoes of this podcast, talking about the top storylines to watch as camp is just about to open up. But first, Matt, a very interesting story around from the league, and that is was going to get fan bases all across the league interested, is that 49ers wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk has asked for a trade. It's been kind of a continual working up to, maybe not a boiling point yet, but it's reaching that point in San Francisco that he wants a new deal. The 49ers have not given him one. He's in the fifth and final year of his rookie contract at $14.1 million, so he's entering that last year of his deal. Obviously, any wide receiver who can get a new contract right now would love to get one because people are getting $25 million deals, and Aiyuk is certainly one of the more valuable receivers in the NFL. Matt, an intriguing, like I said, development for a lot of teams around the league, and especially teams like the Colts, who there is more regarded than not that they could have some more dynamic playmakers in that wide receiving core.
It's kind of one of those things that's been percolating for a little while, and we've heard this before. You know, this sounds very similar. Tyreek Hill wants a big deal, can't necessarily get it with his team, ends up getting traded. So that's kind of the thing that I think people's minds most go to. And for the Colts, my goodness, if you could add a certified great wide receiver, that would be wonderful. But the thing is, you know, it sounds like some teams reportedly have called the 49ers. They're not necessarily interested in trading him at this point, but who knows what trade offers are going to be out there. How much is that going to cost you as a team from the draft capital standpoint? It's probably going to be at least a first round, and then, you know, beyond that, maybe you throw in a second round, third round. I don't know what the going rate is going to be for that. Would the Colts be willing to pay for that, or any other team going to be willing to pay for that? And then, of course, it's the big bugaboo is how much are you willing to pay Aiyuk? Because you're not going to just trade for him, take him for a year, the last year of his contract, and then let him go. So you're going to have to pay him. Obviously, I think the floor there is probably in that $24 million range. How much is it going to be worth to you? Can you work out that long-term deal? And I guess it just kind of depends.
All the right questions to ask completely. And with the Colts where they are, I would say to our listeners, any kind of deal is extremely unlikely, I would think, to bring him here. But there are other teams out there that might have some interest. If you're New England and you want to get a nice wide receiver to pair with your young quarterback in Drake May and give him something to build on, that's intriguing. Washington, to give them something. These are teams with a lot of salary cap space too. Give Jalen Daniels something for him to grow with. Those are just a couple of the ideas. And San Francisco has money to burn too. They are, according to Spot Rack, have the sixth most cap space in the NFL right now, over $30 million. So Aiyuk looks at that and is like, hey, what the heck, man? Come on, let's go. Of course, San Francisco is going to have to think how to spend their money wisely in the future because they have a certain quarterback in Brock Purdy who's going to get a mammoth deal when it's his turn to come up and be paid. So San Francisco right now has no need really to push things and to trade him right away. There's no impetus to do so. You have him under contract for one more year, like I said, the fifth year of his rookie deal. Then you can franchise him next year. So that's 2 years, really. They have a lot of control. You could franchise him again, of course. We talked about that with Michael Pittman as we were kind of outlining those details this summer. But the second franchise tag would be a hefty burden to do. But anyway, like I said, Aiyuk is still really under control for 2 more years. So although he wants a deal, San Francisco has no real reason to rush a deal if they don't want to. So this could be something that drags on. This could be something that he's just posturing and he shows up to camp, or he shows up ready to play for the regular season and he goes and he plays. But we'll certainly keep an eye on this situation. Even though, like I said, I think that any impact on the Colts would be rather unlikely at this point. So that's the big story from around the league this week. Here, closer to home, the Colts have been working out together out in California. We asked Michael Pittman Jr. about this right before they broke camp during the mandatory minicamp week of in June this year, and he said that he was going to hope to get guys out to California, which is what they did this year. There might be a little back and forth between Florida and California in the future for these guys if Anthony Richardson's kind of the go-to in the future, brings people back to his home. But it was Pittman's home out in Florida. A lot of receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, all out there together. This is kind of standard operating procedure there in the NFL, Matt. And the Colts are just one of the many teams doing it, making sure everybody is crisp and ready to go when training camp opens in just a couple weeks, in 1 week.
And that's what you really like to see. You've got your young quarterbacks out there, whether you're talking Anthony Richardson or even really Sam Ehlinger out there too, getting some work with these guys. We didn't see much from Evan Hall last year, for example. He was out there working because he got injured. That's good to see A.D. Mitchell out there. Just, any additional work that these guys can do to kind of work on getting to know each other, I think is always a positive thing. And it looks like they were having a pretty good workout out there.
Yeah, get to work, no doubt. The Colts will bring back the Indiana Knights uniforms this season. They debuted it last year to, we'll call it a mixed reaction from the fans about what it looked like. Yeah, very fair. And I think it was definitely a unique look, and it was a bold strategy. It's really a bold look, because when you go to these alternate uniforms, a lot of it is throwback uniforms, like if the Denver Broncos went back to the Orange Crush, or the Philadelphia Eagles last year did a couple Kelly Green games. The Jacksonville Jaguars just announced today, I retweeted it, that they're going back to the Prowler uniforms, their original uniforms with the old Jaguars logo, and that'll actually be for the game against the Colts, as if they need any more bump to their home games against the Colts, any more ability or any more jacked up fans in the stands to win that game as they have over the last decade. Hey, there you go. That's the power of positive thinking from our venerable Matt Adams back in the studio. So the Colts can hope for that, and hope that those the throwbacks don't bring back Fred Taylor and Jimmy Smith and Mark Brunell to the field. It instead brings back some of those other lesser Jaguar squads from the past. But anyway, back to the Colts. It'll be the Indiana Knights uniform. That's going to be Week 12 when the Detroit Lions are in town on November 24th, so just before Thanksgiving. Something to look forward to, Matt. Something a little special. Whether you like these uniforms or not, I certainly understand either way. But anyway, it'll be something unique for that game against the Lions. It's a different blue, and like I said, if you're a team and you're going to do a uniform switch, a lot of it's throwback uniforms. If you're trying to get a new uniform, like a completely new idea, that's a really bold strategy, and there's gonna be a reaction from the fan base, like there was last year when this came out. And all I'll say about it is this: obviously, you cared so much if you're the Colts last year that the two people that you used to display the uniforms were Alec Pierce and Rodney Thomas. Okay, and I like those two guys. They're good young players, or they're potential young players. But if you were really serious about going full bore about these uniforms and being so excited about them, it would have been DeForest Buckner, it would have been Quentin Nelson, it would have been Kenny Moore, Jonathan Taylor. Of course, probably not Jonathan Taylor because there were some issues last year. Yeah, exactly. Probably not Taylor, but maybe Pittman. But you know what I'm saying. They love the idea so much that they got kind of the at the time starters, and they still are starters really, but kind of the second tier starters, not the cream of the crop.
It's like trading down to in the second round to get this receiver that you really
they
love.
love
Not to make a hit, but it's kind of the same.
Right,
same
they love
idea.
AD Mitchell so much. They love the Indiana Knights uniform so much that they gave you Pierce and Thomas for it. So anyway, if you love the uniforms, if you think they're just the best thing ever, fantastic, good for you. Go buy some merch and have a good time with that. Training camp is just 1 week out. First practice Thursday, July 25th, as the players report the day before, next Wednesday, the 24th. As a reminder, if you are going to camp this year, there will be a charge for some practices. It'll be the afternoon and the night practices on certain dates. And those are all available. You can go to our website, fox59.com, search Colts Camp. You can find the stories there. But those are July 27th, 28th, August 4th, August 14th, August 15th. And that $5 charge is only for fans 18 and up. So if you're bringing your kids are free. Fantastic. If you're just going by yourself, if you're skipping out on work, don't worry, I won't report you. But you're going to have to bring $5 to get in there to Colts Camp. Right, so do it in advance. There's online options. Consider that. The final practice on Thursday, August 15th, is the last of 2 joint practices against the Cardinals. A 6 p.m. start time for that one. That's set in stone. Excuse me. Some teams have already reported to training camp. The Broncos, the Packers, the Texans, the Seahawks, all already there. I believe it's the Texans and the Packers. No, the Bears are in the Hall of Fame game. So never mind with that. Even the team of the Hall of Fame game not quite in yet. But these other teams have already reported to training camp. And much of the NFL, including the Colts, are going to join them next week. So, as we are on the doorstep of training camp, let's break down some of the top storylines that we have. We have 10, and then there's a couple honorable mentions that we could get into if we have time. But as you no doubt would guess, everything for the Colts relies on Anthony Richardson this year. So if you're looking for a storyline regarding him, like, you could consider health. But in my estimation, if health is a concern for Richardson, if his shoulder with that AC joint repair is still a concern, then it's a 5-alarm fire right away going into camp. So I'm not even going to consider that right now, to be perfectly honest, because I don't think there's any reason to. If we get to camp and something changes, then we will change our analysis. But I think the storyline with Richardson, and Matt and I discussed this week, is he in command? Is he taking charge? Is he the one guy that everyone is looking to? Because last year, of course, it was different, Matt, with both him and Gardner Minshew, at least at the start of training camp, going in, sharing reps, sharing the leadership role. Like, I want to see him out there completely in control. And if he is in control, I think that is going to be the best sign for a knowledgeable and a smart, which you want smart play from your quarterback, and a positive training camp for him this year. And I think that if he's wandering around or he is not on the same page with receivers, or if he's, I don't know, just like doesn't appear to be in control, for lack of a better word, then that's my big concern. But I'm not guessing that, but I'm just saying that's my most important thing to watch in this camp. The most important storyline to go in is how in command is Anthony Richardson of this offense, because he's had a year to sit, not do it, but learn it. So is he in control? Does he appear to have his head wrapped around what Shane Steichen wants him to do this year?
Do you want your rookie quarterback to get injured and not play in games? The answer to that question, no, of course not. However, there are some benefits to that. And some of the benefits of that is kind of be able to sit back, kind of look at things holistically, and then also, just really hammer down on that film study, know that playbook inside and out. And I tell you, I'm just encouraged a lot. And, of course, they're going to all say good things, so you got to take that with a grain. But I'm encouraged with, the fact that Richardson has been kind of communicating back and forth with Steichen in the offseason on offensive concepts, things, why don't we add this? Why don't we try that? because I think that really shows a lot of ownership of the team from Richardson. And we saw that a little bit last year, too, in the games that he was able to play. So I think that only enhances it. Would we have liked him to have gotten more experience last year? Yes. Would we have liked him to have been in that last game of the season that was essentially a playoff game? Yes. We would have loved that. But from the standpoint of this is a quarterback who doesn't have a ton of necessary experience as far as the X's and O's of the game, it's not an entirely bad thing. But you're absolutely right. You want to see him in there. You want to see him in command of the huddle, and you want to see him, directing the traffic. Say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, because if he knows what's going on out there on the field, then the rest of the team will know, and it should set up a pretty exciting offensive brand of football.
Yeah, and the transition from, taking what he should know from a year behind the scenes, and like you said, being able to go back and forth with Steichen, to have all the film study that he wants, really, at this point. It's all about taking that and actually doing it. Like it's different when it's live. It just is, as our Mike Chappell would say. It just is all the time. When he gets out there in the preseason, depending on how much he plays there, obviously he'll get plenty of reps with those joint practices that the Colts have planned this season. But how does he look? Like, how does he look in those ones will be important. How much in control is he there? Is he on time, on target with his receivers? Do people because like I said, when everything's live, it's a different animal. And that was the one knock on Richardson coming out of the draft. The biggest knock, at least, was he just didn't have a lot of playing experience. So in some sense, last year was terrible for him because he needed playing time, and he only got 4 games, and not even 4 full games. He only finished one of those games that he started. So before he was knocked out in week 5 of the season against Tennessee. So if you told me before last year that Anthony Richardson was only going to attempt 84 passes, I would say, what the heck, man? Like that's not good. And you could sprinkle it with any rose-colored words that you want about like seeing optimistic things in his play, and I think we did see optimistic things in his play. Like you could sprinkle it with any optimistic things about, well, he got more time to be behind the scenes and learn, and those are all true things. But he needs to play, and he needs to be out there and take charge and command the offense, and that is how he is going to get better. That is the only way. So he needs to stay healthy. He needs to be healthy, first of all. He needs to stay healthy, and then he needs to be in charge. And I think that the majority of people who come out to training camp in Westfield or to go to preseason games at Lucas Oil Stadium, Matt, will want to see Anthony Richardson before anything else, and I think that's what they should be looking for if they have one thing in mind to pay attention when they're watching him over the next couple of months.
Yeah, learning and knowing the playbook inside and out in a season in which you've been injured is the best case of the worst case scenario. It's not the best case scenario in general, because we want to see him play 18 games or 16 games, something along those lines. If he missed a game or two here last season, not that big of a deal, but to miss the significant chunk is a little bit of a setback because, I know it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit here, but what I'm trying to say is essentially also in some capacities, while he did have that time for sort of the mental advancement of the game from the on-field experience portion of it, you're still almost trotting out what is essentially a rookie quarterback, which, we'll see how that works.
So who is going to help him in terms of catching the football? There's a couple of guys that we know for sure. I think Michael Pittman Jr. has a role and is pretty well defined in this offense. We've seen it in the past. Maybe he's attacking downfield a little bit more with a more strong-armed quarterback under center, like he did in 2021 with a guy that we won't name here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. But Josh Downs as well, pretty solid, I think, rookie season. Can build on what he saw, but you saw a good role for him carved out in the offense. After that, another big storyline to watch is what is the wide receiver rotation. Because outside of those two, I think that there are roles still to be defined in terms of the wide receivers specifically. And a major point of intrigue in this camp will be the battle for that third wide receiver spot behind Pittman, behind Downs. or really it's a different position, to be perfectly honest. So it's hard to say they're behind those guys. And I know what people mean when they say they're the third receiver, they're the third option probably, or they have the third most receptions. But in this spot opposite those two, is it going to be Alec Pierce getting the majority of the reps? Is it going to be Adonai Mitchell getting the majority of the reps, the rookie? Now, by all intents and purposes, and by all of my observations at not training camp, excuse me, at mini camp or the offseason, A.D. Mitchell looked just fine. He looked very comfortable. He looked smooth. He looked like a good route runner. But things, again, are different when it gets live. So this is what you hear everywhere. This guy's having a great camp. He's having a great offseason. He's in better shape than he's ever been in his life. And we heard that about Alec Pierce, honestly. That he's in better shape than he's ever been. He looks big. He looks strong. So I like those things are all fantastic, Matt. They're all great. I love them. Let's hear it. Fantastic. Say them all. But it doesn't matter until we have live football out there. Let's see how it actually turns into results on the field. So one thing that I think fans should pay attention to, again, if you come out to Westfield, is how do those two guys look? What are they able to do? What is one able to do that the other isn't able to do? Which ones get the majority of the reps with the first team? Do they go back and forth? Or is it really Alec Pierce that's getting most of them, A.D. Mitchell working with the second team? Because I think that's how it's going to be at the start, is Pierce will get the first reps with the first team offense. But there is certainly the ability for Mitchell to take more reps if indeed he proves he deserves them. So the battle between those two should be a good battle. It should be a fun battle. And I think that by the end of training camp, you will have, I think, a good idea of what the Colts want to do. And as of now, I can't tell you exactly what the Colts want to do with both of them.
Because, I mean, they're both they're both extremely athletic guys. Pierce does have the experience on him now because he's entering his third year here. So it may be a case of who do you trust when it's third down and you've got to make a blitz adjustment on your hot route. And if that's the case, then experience gets a little bit of the edge there, I think. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about Mitchell for a while.
Yeah, I do too. I think Mitchell, I think that he has one trait that elite receivers in the NFL have, and that's the ability to get open. And that sounds like the dumbest thing that an analyst could say. Like, it sounds so stupid. Like, oh, he can get open. Yeah, he's a good receiver. Yeah, you should put him in the game. But not every wide receiver can get separation. I think maybe that's a better way to put it. Like, get separation from the defensive back. And he does that on first glimpse pretty darn well. So what Pierce does really well is he can get deep. He can get separation with guys. And Reggie Wayne talked about this last year, that there were 10, 11 times where Pierce breaks deep and he's open in the route, but for whatever reason, whether it's a quarterback's arm or a breakdown in protection or going somewhere else, that he did not get the ball. So Pierce can go deep. If you need a guy to push the envelope deep, right now Pierce is your better option. And we talked about this for a couple years with Alec Pierce, that he's his strength is being a deep ball receiver. And his development in the NFL will have to do with his development more on short to intermediate routes, and probably more intermediate routes. You're never going to have Alec Pierce be the guy that Josh Downs is. They're just different body types. They're different receivers. But how much can Alec Pierce add to his repertoire to get the 7 to 10 yard out route, or the ability to break free from a cornerback if you're running a mesh concept with two crossers underneath? Can you get separation there instead of just hitting you 25 to 30 yards downfield? With Mitchell, I think the most important thing for him, like you mentioned, Matt, is kind of understanding the offense, first of all, and knowing what to do when plays break down, and also to be able, obviously, to block. Because this is going to be a team that loves to run the ball. And if Mitchell can't block, he's not going to play. It's as simple as that. I don't care if he is a better receiver than Pierce. He's going to come in on third down, passing down situations, and Pierce is going to be in, for 70% of the snaps, and maybe Mitchell's in for 20 or 30 if he's not able to block. Because if he can't, like I said, if he can't block, then he's just not going to play. So Pierce, I think last year had, I don't know if he had more snaps than Michael Pittman, but I think he had a ton of snaps. Like, he was in a lot because he can block. So Pittman can block too. Those are good blocking receivers. So if you're Shane Steichen and you have a one-dimensional guy that can't block, then what's the point of having you out there for the majority of snaps? So if you're looking at, again, between these two guys, who's going to play more, if one of them is not able to run block, then that guy is not going to play more. And Matt, I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point on the run blocking. And Alec Pierce, like, it's sort of one of those things that you look at his numbers and you see, he only had, so many catches or whatever. But when the guy's out there on the field a lot and they're effectively running the ball, there's a reason that guy's out there playing. That's why they're giving him all the snaps. And then when he is getting open downfield and they're not able to get him the ball, whether it's because they schemed it up, but they had a pass protection breakdown, or we had to have a dump down, or the quarterback just decided to make a quick decision on it, wouldn't let it develop. He can be effective out there. I thought he had an okay, not a stellar season by any stretch, but I thought Alec Pierce was pretty effective last year when they were able to use him. It's just the point was they were not able to use him in the way that he is best used, and that is just throttling it down and going downfield.
I'm eager to see each of them because I think each of them can take a big step forward and make this offense better. There's only so many balls to go around, so whichever one can better impact the offense is obviously the one that's going to play. And, well, like I mentioned, leading into another topic, another storyline to watch, this is going to be a running team. So what is Jonathan Taylor's impact going to be? And we got to see all of 2 snaps in NFL games with Jonathan Taylor, and Anthony Richardson before Richardson got bounced and missed the rest of the season. And at that time, Taylor was still working his way back. He clearly got better at the end of last season, and he also got more reps at the end of last season, so that probably helped, that he was out there more, he got more of a feel of the game, and Anthony Richardson was not there for it. So the Colts have every intention of giving Jonathan Taylor the ball and giving him a run at his 2021 form. I promise you. Like, we can talk as much about A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce if we want. We can talk as much about the tight ends as we want, and like which one's going to get more reps. And we might do that a little bit later in this podcast. Might do that. But Jonathan Taylor is a guy that, especially alongside Anthony Richardson in the backfield, will make this offense go. That is very much what the Colts would love to see, is Jonathan Taylor returning to 5.5 yards per carry like he had back in 2021. If he can get 18 touchdowns again, that would be exceptional. If he can get 1,800 yards again, that would be fantastic. I don't know if he'll necessarily get all those, but they're gonna give him the opportunity to be really what this offense can focus around. And really, it's a combination of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson's dangerous abilities himself, his athletic ability. Because, as much as you want your quarterback to stay healthy, you don't draft Anthony Richardson with the point of making him a pocket passer. That's just not what he does. You want him to be dynamic. You're going to have him out there being in the running game. And how much does he impact Jonathan Taylor? How much can Taylor help Richardson? Those are things that we have to see in action again. Like, I keep coming back to this, that the game action is what matters. And these are all the questions that we'll be able to get some answers to as we watch in training camp. That's why we're talking about him here in our training camp preview. So what is Taylor's impact going to be? How does he work well with Anthony Richardson in the offense, Matt? Because I really think that he is going to be the engine that makes this offense work. As much as we want to focus on Anthony Richardson, Taylor is what could make this offense a really vaulted into one of the better, more dangerous offenses in the league if he is at his best.
Well, when you can run the ball effectively, it eases up your passing game a little bit, opens up a little bit of space, It opens up that play action game. It really makes that RPO very, very effective. And I mean, listen, the Colts ran some effective RPO stuff with Gardner Minshew. And Gardner's a little more athletic, I think, than people give him credit for, but he's not Anthony Richardson by any stretch of the imagination. Still makes some nice plays off of that action. So you get Jonathan Taylor in there with Anthony Richardson. I think running the RPO stuff is really going to be effective for the Colts. Now, and JT's got motivation this year too, because he got his new contract. He's the third highest paid running back in the league right now, making about $14 million behind McCaffrey and I believe Kamara are the other two who are the only other two running backs paid more than Taylor in the league. So, he's got a lot of motivation this year, I think, to come out and show that he's worth that contract. And, man, when the Colts offense gets rolling, it's usually because Jonathan Taylor is running the engine.
Yeah, it's like the Colts wouldn't pay him that if they weren't going to make him a focal point of their offense. It's not the 20+ million that Pittman got, but it's, like you mentioned, making him the third highest paid running back in the league. You don't pay a running back $13-14 million unless you are going to use him and use him a lot. And Taylor's still young. He's still got years left. I know there's a lot of talk over the last couple off seasons, which we did here on our podcast with the Taylor situation about how long running backs last in the NFL, about how valuable running backs are in the NFL. But once that contract is paid, you see what the value is to the team. And once the Colts signed Taylor on the dotted line, like that immediately signaled where this team was going to go over the next 3 or 4 years of his contract, that they wanted him to be a primary focus of what they do, and they were going to ride him as long as they possibly could. And to put him alongside Anthony Richardson is something that Shane Steichen has looked forward to, something that Chris Ballard has looked forward to, something Jim Irsay has looked forward to. All of those guys, the most important people in terms of directing this Colts franchise. So you're going to see it. You're going to see it a lot. You're going to see RPO a lot, or at least that action a lot. It is going to be a main focus of this offense. It's the play action, like you said, Matt, is going to be a main focus of this offense. There's going to be a lot of run action before the play. I think there's going to be a decent amount of motion before the play this year to try to get defenses, try to get a look from the defense, try to get them moving in the wrong direction or in one direction. So then you can make a decision which direction to go in any RPO scheme. So Taylor will have a massive impact if he stays healthy. That's always a corollary. If he stays healthy, if Richardson stays healthy, if the offensive line stays healthy, if they play as well as they did last year as opposed to 2 years ago, for sure. And there's no reason that you would say that they would go backwards. I don't think, which is always a possibility. But I don't think there's any reason to think that they would take a step back with this new. Well, not new anymore, but last year, the offensive line coach, Sperano Jr., coming in and really helping turn them around. So yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor's impact it's hard to tell how running backs are doing, Matt, in training camp. So it's hard to really, I think, focus on them. But the preseason games, I don't think Taylor will play all that much. This is honestly a storyline that, yeah, we might not get any real answers to this until the season begins.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to know kind of what we're thinking about Jonathan Taylor and sort of the read option and the RPO game. I don't think we're going to really know much about that until we get into week 1, week 2, that sort of stuff, because that'll really they're not going to give you much in the preseason, look-wise and then personnel-wise. Like, there's really not much reason to put Taylor out there. So it's going to be you're going to have to wait till the regular season to kind of see how this all unfolds.
Indeed. So those are our top 3 storylines. They're all offensive. Let's shift to the defensive side of the ball, where maybe things are a little bit more concrete than on offense, because you're bringing back everybody, just like you were on offense. But again, with the addition of Anthony Richardson, everything is kind of a little bit more fluid. On defense, things will be less fluid. They will be a little bit more steady. And the strength of the team, the strength of that unit specifically on defense, is going to be the defensive line, or at least it better be. If it's not, you're in big trouble, because they've invested in the defensive line. Last year, the Colts set an Indianapolis era record for sacks on the defensive line. They brought back everybody of note on the defensive line, and they added the 15th overall pick, Latu, the first defensive player taken in this year's NFL draft. So the question becomes, and the storyline is, who's in charge? Who's ruling? Not in charge, because that's DeForest Buckner. He's the leader there. No doubt about that. But who is ruling the day on the defensive line? And you could say, well, it could bounce from one guy to the other. It could be Kwity Paye one day. It could be Dio one day. It could be Ebukam one day. It could be Latu one day. But really, Matt, part of what the Colts' problem has been on the defensive line and rushing the passer over the past 10 years, really since Mathis in 2013 or 14 had that 20 sack season, has been there has not been one guy you can rely on to make a play in crunch time, when the team absolutely needs it. Because for years, Mathis and Freeney obviously did that, and you could rely on them to make the play when it mattered. And the Colts, in spite of racking up a great number of sacks last year, there were still times, look back to last year in the very last game of the season, when C.J. Stroud tore them up, where you needed somebody to step up, and no one ever did. So who takes charge as the guy on the defensive line, as the guy you can rely on? And I say this really with respect to DeForest Buckner, at least I try to say it with respect to him, because he's been a very good interior defender for a long time in the league. He has not reached 10 sacks with the Colts, but it's a lot harder for interior defensive linemen to do that. Those guys are much rarer than exterior, than outside defensive linemen who get those 10 sacks. So really, I think you could even focus this storyline more on who is in charge, who is the one on the outside that becomes the go-to guy. Because there's different players that can possibly be that, but who is going to be the guy that you can rely on in that crunch time to get a sack, to get a play, to make a play, to get the other offense off the field, to strip the quarterback, to get your offense on the field. So who is it, Matt, that takes the next step on this defensive line and really is the guy that you can rely on in those situations?
Well, it's instructive a couple of things. First of all, even though the Colts set that record for the franchise, nobody had double-digit sacks for the team last year. And a group effort's not a bad thing. It's just there was nobody that was the closer, as you said. Also, the Colts didn't renew the contract of their defensive line coach, Nate Ollie. They brought in Charlie Partridge, outside, who is well-known and well-regarded as a defensive line coach that can help some of these guys maybe take their game up a notch on the individual aspect. So, I really think with them picking up the option on Kwity Paye, I think it's a really big year for Kwity. And if he can develop a little bit more to just kind of being really, really good, being exceptional in some of these because the thing is with the outside pass rushers for the Colts, they have one-on-one opportunities because you've got DeForest Buckner and you've got to double team that guy. You've got Grover Stewart. He eats up space. They both can also put pass rush from the interior. So these outside guys should have more opportunities and better numbers. So I'm looking at Kwity from that perspective of what I would like to see. And of course, you've got Latu. We don't know exactly what role he'll play, but will he have the chance to put up double-digit sacks? It just depends on how his development goes. But I would like to see a little bit more from Kwity Paye is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and that's perfectly reasonable for a first-round pick, going into his fifth year in the league. I think he's done a lot of great things, and we've talked about him on this podcast of if you can be a Jabal Sheard, that's a really good NFL career. But at the same time, you would hope for a little bit more from your first-round pick. And so I know Kwity hopes for a little bit more himself, so I don't think I'm out of line saying that. Like, if you could bump yourself up to 10 sacks a season more reliably, that'd be fantastic for a first-round pick. That's what you hope for. That's what you want. And, of course, since the Colts took Latu at 15, that's what they hope from him. But I think you're right, Matt. I think that expectations for Latu, at least at the start of the year, should not be overinflated, because I don't think he's going to take over and play immediately. Now, if he comes into camp and he's just a one-man wrecking ball, then you've got to get him on the field more than you plan. But with the guys you have at the start of the year, like Ebukam, who had a career year last year, Kwity Paye, you have Dio Odangbo and Tyquan Lewis able to rotate in. Like, you can bring in Latu at whatever speed works for him. You don't need to push him right away. You want to push him eventually, I think, because I think the hope is that he could be the guy that you can rely on for 12 to 15 sacks a year, for crying out loud. But somebody's got to take a step in this unit for the defensive line, which, like I said, is the strength of this Colts defense, to help the team as a whole take the next step to where they want to go, and that's division titles, playoffs, in contention.
Yeah, it's a solid unit, but as you just want, and we've heard Chap say it before, you just want a little bit more. And then also with Latu, you've said it before, Chap said it before, it's sort of probably really look at Dwight Freeney's rookie season, because Freeney didn't start right away. They used him situationally, and then he just basically played in such a way that they could not keep him out of the starting lineup. And that's what you would really like to see by the time you get to maybe Game 7, Game 8 of this year. Like, you have no choice but to put Latu in the game.
And having a strong defensive line is going to be crucial for this team, because it is the most experienced group on the team, I think. You could argue linebackers in there as well, but I think defensive line has a little bit more if you look at both first and second unit entirely. But a strong defensive line, a strong pass rush is going to help your secondary, and this secondary is going to need help. You have to think that they will, because this is a young group, and I think there's really two different storylines to watch, and that's really at both corner and safety. We'll start at corner first. How do these young guys develop? Which one will take charge? Who's your go-to guy on the outside? Kenny Moore, his role is set. And I think, 2 thumbs up for Kenny. He had a good year last year, much better than 2 years ago, as he was getting used to this new defensive scheme with Gus Bradley. Obviously, he fit before under Matt Eberflus. The question was, would he fit under Gus? I think we learned last year he does. 2 years ago, it was certainly more of a question. But who on the outside is going to be the guy? Because at the start of this offseason, this might have been the one position that you would think the Colts would address somewhere significantly with either a high draft pick or a veteran signing. They did not. They went elsewhere with those decisions. They decided that Juju Brents, Dallas Flowers, Jalen Jones, some combination of those three, is going to be good enough to start in the NFL. And toward the end of last season, Matt, I think they showed improvement, but nevertheless, you look at what happened 2 years ago to a guy we'll talk about in a minute, Rodney Thomas. He showed improvement his rookie year toward the end of the season. And last year took a significant step, maybe not a significant step, but took a step back in terms of his production on the field. So you say, hey, these corners look good at the end of the season. That should be optimistic for their chances in year 2. Well, like I said, that's the case with Rodney Thomas 2 years ago. You should be optimistic about his year 2, but then he got benched by the end of the year. So if you're looking at these defensive backs, it is in no way a guarantee that they are going to be good enough. There's just no way for me to sugarcoat that. The Colts hope they are. They have optimism that they are, but they're all young. They're all pretty inexperienced. You hope that they can take that next step, and you're going to throw them out into the fire to see, Matt, if they can do that or not.
As much as the offense hinges on Anthony Richardson, really the franchise, so it's not a perfect comparison, hinges on Anthony Richardson. The defense sort of hinges on what are you going to get from these guys in the secondary. And, obviously the Colts front office and the coaching staff has a lot of faith in these guys, but it's not that optimism, not necessarily shared by the fan base or outsiders looking in, because they're so young, and you would have thought that they would have used some of that draft capital that they had to maybe pick up somebody, and they drafted some guys, but they're late round guys, and you just don't know what impact was going to be, because there were a couple of really good corners in there that they could have taken, and they decided to go pass rushes where they felt that they needed the most help, and so that's what they did. But a lot of the success of this unit will depend on how these young guys can hold up. Juju Brents, I think if he can stay healthy, and it's a big I and a big F on that because of what we saw last season, I think he's going to be really, really solid. He could even turn into a playmaker for them. Jalen Jones got a lot of experience as a rookie. It'll probably translate into a good season too, but it may not because of you mentioned Rodney Thomas. And then you've got Dallas Flowers, who doesn't have a ton of experience, but is also one of their more athletic guys out there. So it's really up in the air when it comes to cornerback. And, if they do increase their pass rush a little bit, they get a little more pressure on the front end, that will help the back end of the defense. But also, you cannot rely on that as well. So you've got to have guys who can cover.
The Colts want Juju Brents to be the guy. We'll throw that out there, and that could be the obvious thing to say, but we'll make it obvious that they want Juju Brents to be their number one corner now and moving forward. And somewhere between Dallas Flowers and Jalen Jones competing for that number 2 spot, competition will bring out the best of whoever that is, and that person will fill in. Will rookies Jalen Simpson and Micah Abraham find a role? You hope not, to be perfectly honest. You hope that they're backups. You hope that they're special teams guys. Abraham, yes, exactly. Abraham during the offseason looked to be the backup to Kenny Moore specifically. So in the slot role. So that's probably what he's going to slide in on. That's what Tony Brown was last year, and more of a special teams player, of course, as well. And we saw what happened when Tony Brown was asked to do something on the outside. That was not what he was supposed to do. That's not his strength. Well, then it was there any consideration to go back to who was it? The other guy, and I forget his name already, and that's probably a bad thing. But anyway, it was like, no, we already knew what he could do, so we left Tony out there. It's like, oh boy, we already knew what he could do. Yikes. Anyway, I feel bad that I can't remember his name. It'll probably come back to me in like 10 minutes, right as soon as we're off the air. Anyway, next topic is what's going on at safety. As Matt notes here in our rundown, it feels like a Groundhog Day theme around here because it's the same thing over again. You got Julian Blackmon, Nick Cross, and Rodney Thomas, kind of 1, 2, 3. Will they add a veteran there? Who knows at this point? We'll ask Chris Ballard that next week probably, and he'll say, well, that is always a possibility that we could add somebody, guys. And he's not going to show his hand at all. But Julian Blackmon, they're going to have a big expectations for him. And, of course, he wasn't there for that Week 18 game last year, the loss to the Houston Texans that sent the Texans on to the playoffs. They hope it's Blackmon and Nick Cross. Let's throw that out there again. They hope it's those two. But does Rodney Thomas have to play? Is somebody else going to sneak in there? It's not going to be Daniel Scott because he's injured again right now. Unfortunately, really feel bad for Scott as a guy who's been injured in both of his first 2 years coming out of college, that they wanted to see him back there in some form or fashion. But it's a big hope that they're pretty confident that Blackmon can handle himself. It's a big hope that Nick Cross is finally ready after a couple years where he hasn't quite been ready yet, Matt.
Yeah, and like I said, it did, because we've talked about this so many times on the podcast over the last year. What are they going to do at safety? And yeah, you get good play from Julian Blackmon, but then, he gets hurt. He's not available for Week 18, first play of the game. What do we have? It's Nico Collins for 75 yards. Would it have been the same if Blackmon was out there? I don't know. Maybe not. But, and then you've got Nick Cross, who was very young when he was drafted. You're kind of waiting for everything to click for him. And so, we're going to start him, but then we're going to play him, and then he's going to go on the bench and just kind of stay there until we absolutely have to play him. And then you're like, but we'll just put Ronnie Harrison Jr. back there because he used to play safety. I mean, that's kind of where they were last year in the secondary. And I just feel like it's kind of a repeat this year. So maybe these guys with a little bit more experience, another year into the system, maybe healthy, maybe it's a better situation. But for right now, giant question mark for me.
I've always, there's something that I remember from my first job in television was out in Bozeman, Montana, and I covered Montana State athletics extensively. The defensive backs coach at Montana State then was Noah Joseph, who's actually been an assistant coach at both Indiana and Purdue over the recent years. And I've seen him a couple times, and we've reminisced about our fun out in Big Sky country. But I'll always remember one thing that he said about defensive back play is, like, the most important thing you could do is not let somebody get behind you. Like, it's so simple. Like, it's the bare bones basics. And this position specifically, with Blackman playing the strong, he's the guy who falls down into the box. The other position that they're trying for is the free, like the guy who doesn't let anybody get behind you. Just don't let anybody get behind you. Like, you can make some mistakes with guys in front of you. I think that you can live with that. Don't let anybody go Nico Collins and go 75 yards on you. It seems so easy to say, but it has been difficult for the Colts to lay down a set guy that's been able to do that. And I think that's the frustrating part for Colts fans watching, is once there's just a little bit of question in the secondary and in the back end in particular, I think things have kind of imploded. So you're hoping that is in the past, and hope is just a weird thing to with what has happened in the past with the same guys. Hope that what you have seen in the past does not happen again can be a frustrating thing to enter when there have been options to go around and look around and find other guys, bring them in. So we'll see what happens. I think it could be a frustrating time for the back end until someone else comes in. I don't know, but if maybe Gus Bradley and the defensive staff are just the smartest people in the world, and they've figured out what to do here. And if that is, then fantastic. But as of now, I would go in with a little bit of consternation about this group, Matt.
And until kind of one of those things, until proven otherwise, that's just kind of how you're going to feel.
Yep. We got 4 more topics to get to. We'll kind of blaze through them a little bit because those first ones are really, I think, the main ones. All those topics that we've covered so far are really the main 6 that I thought going into this into this training camp. The next one, who becomes a primary defensive playmaker? You mentioned Juju Brents earlier. I think the Colts would love for that to happen. We saw a bit from him last year. I mean, his first game playing in Baltimore, punches the ball out for Kenyon Drake running down the sideline. It gets the Colts the ball back when every possession was important in that game for sure. This is really still filling the void that Shaquille Leonard left from 2021, was the last dynamic season that he had. Yeah. Can anybody match that? I don't think so. Leonard was special, man. He really, really was. And it hurts that his last impressions on this Colts fan base were what they were, because he just was not the same guy. And it was frustrating for fans to watch. It was more frustrating for him for sure. But can somebody help fill the void there? Will E.J. Speed do something at linebacker? Will Zaire Franklin? Speed is the one that's a little bit more dynamic, athletic player, so you would lean maybe to him. Will it be Juju Brents? Will it be Laiatu Latu doing more things in the backfield? Can Kenny Moore? Does Julian Blackman have another 4 to 6, and maybe he improves and gets more interceptions in him? So if somebody can step up in that vein, Matt, I think that will go a long way in making this a better defense.
It kind of goes along with, who's your closer on third down? Who's your guy who, when you need to get the ball back, can get it back? And for years, it was Shaq Leonard. And as you alluded to, we just not have seen anyone. We've got a lot of solid playmakers out there. We haven't seen that guy who can just turn the game on a dime.
Yeah. So that's on defense. How about we shift back to offense? This is a topic that you really don't want to be a thing, but you have to recognize in the back of your mind that it could be a thing. And so if you're going to go to camp and you want to know a little bit about what this offense will be if Anthony Richardson gets hurt, which he did last year, I'd encourage you to watch a little bit of Joe Flacco and see what his strengths are. Because it was certainly, we watched plenty of Gardner Minshew last year, and we saw what he could do. Flacco, his strengths, he's got a great arm, man. He still does. He's 38, 39 years old, but that's still a strong arm, which is unlike what the Colts have had with their backup quarterbacks really in recent years. So, Matt, what does the Colts offense look like when he has to fill in? It's obviously going to be different. It's not going to be the same RPO style that they're going to run with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, but it will still be, I think, an offense that wants to attack down the field. They'll just have to do that in a slightly different way with Flacco.
Yeah, I don't think, because they were able to run some RPO action with Minshew, and they might attempt to do that with Flacco, although a defender who thinks he's going to take off and run the ball have to have second thoughts about that guy on your roster. But the thing is, I do think they'll have a lot of opportunities because Flacco's very good with play action. So I think, if they're able to run the ball effectively, which I think they will be able to with their O-line and with Taylor, Flacco's a good play action quarterback as well. So I think they could have some success with that. But again, not something I necessarily want to see much of.
Right, but certainly something to watch for sure. Like, how does Flacco look? And during the offseason, he looked just fine. Like, he certainly doesn't look like he's old and washed up, and he didn't last year when he was playing for the Browns. That's for darn sure. We'll be watching him a little bit. How about which rookie, besides A.D. Mitchell or Laiatu Latu, will have the biggest impact on this team? Outside of those two, the drafted rookies, Matt Gonzalez and Tanner Bornolini on the offensive line, Anthony Gould, the wide receiver / kick returner, Jalen Carlisle, who they're a safety that they're going to transition to linebacker, and then cornerbacks Jalen Simpson and Micah Abraham, who we mentioned earlier, and also the 7th round, your last pick from this draft, Jonah Laulu, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Out of all of those, I think there's two that I think the Colts would like to see make impacts. Anthony Gould is obviously one of them with his ability in the kick return game. He's definitely going to get that opportunity. And the other one, if I had to pick someone else, would be Jalen Carlisle, because we were just talking about who could be a playmaker on the defense. I think they have their eyes set on Carlisle being that type of player down the road, a guy who has good ball skills with his work in the secondary, but is also a big, lanky, physical player who can mix it up as a linebacker as well. So those would be my two picks, Matt. And I think I would lean toward Gould because I think he's going to get more opportunity this year. But you can make a good case for either one of those two.
Carlisle is my pick as well because when I saw some tape of this guy, I was very reminded of he doesn't quite have the top line speed necessarily of Darius / Shaq Leonard, but my goodness, the body type, the length, and then the ability, since he's played in the secondary, the ability to cover, disrupt, pass. If they can translate that into linebacker, I think he could be a really significant addition to this team, which would be great. What was he, a 5th round pick, I think? That would be good. The other one, I think a little bit of a dark horse perhaps, and you really don't want to see it, but I think they might have a good swing guy in Tanner Bortolini on the offensive line as well.
If one of them has to make an impact, whether it's Gonzalez or Bortolini, like, you hope it's a good one. That's the only way to say it. Like these guys are, like, you hope they don't play, but you're going to trade them to play and see. Like, last year, Blake Freeland got thrown in and had to play against Myles Garrett, for crying out loud. And exactly, appreciate that. And I don't think as a fan you could look at what Freeland did and be anything but, well, that's better than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, you have a good idea of his base and what he can be as a swing tackle. So you're optimistic about him. Hopefully, if Gonzalez or Bortolini play, they do enough to make you as optimistic about their future as Freeland, I think, made Colts fans optimistic about his future last year. Last one, 10th final storyline entering this training camp. At tight end, who makes the cut? The Colts have 5 players who made some type of an impact on the team last year: Jelani Woods, Will Mallory, Kylan Granson, Drew Ogletree, Mo Alley-Cox. How many do they keep on the roster? Who stays, who goes? It's going to be a battle just like it was last year, Matt, entering training camp when all these guys were on the roster at that point. So they're all back again because they all have some type of ability. And I think it'll be an intriguing battle with all of them yet again to see who rises above the rest of them and then gets the most opportunity to play this year.
Yeah, it's a little Groundhog Day-ish again here because we joked, about how many tight ends they had on the roster, and they drafted at that point. They had drafted Will Mallory as well on top of that. So it's a strong group. They all are a little bit different. Jelani Woods is your playmaker. Will Mallory's a pass catcher. So is Kylan Granson, but he's a little bit smaller and a little bit faster. Drew Ogletree is kind of an all-around guy, and Mo Alley-Cox is your blocker, your best blocker amongst the group. So, everybody's got – that's why they have all these guys on the rosters, because they all do something a little bit different. I would expect Jelani Woods to stick around. I think that they're very excited to get him integrated. Kylan Granson had a decent season last year, so I wouldn't be surprised, but they were also very high on Will Mallory. We saw some good things from Drew Ogletree before he got injured, and then, of course, before the domestic battery issue that he had last year that led to the suspension. And then, Mo Alley-Cox. People have been cutting Mo Alley-Cox from the Colts for what feels like a decade now. But Mo Alley-Cox sticks around because Mo's got a really good understanding of the offense, and he's a very good blocker and a good teammate. So it's really open season on this one.
You can't get rid of Mo. You just can't do it. Like you said, Colts fans have been trying to boot him off the team every fall for the past 4 years, it seems like. And he keeps coming back. Why? What did we talk about earlier with wide receivers, Matt? With the battle between Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell. If you can't block, you won't play. Who can block? And heck, who do you want, Mo or Drew Ogletree? Like, Drew's a big guy, but you want Mo because he's a better blocker. Who do you want, Mo or Will Mallory? You want Mo. That's as simple as it is. And with this team going to be a running team, like, you're going to want guys who can block. So the only way Mo becomes expendable is if Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree, I think, take significant steps forward as blockers. Or Will Mallory takes a significant step forward as a blocker. But that's not really his strength right now. I'm not going to say Kylan Granson because he's like a different position. He's more of an H-back. Like, yeah, he's a tight end listed on the roster, but like he does not play the same position as Mo Alley Cox. you just can't make that argument. Like they are different positions, very much so. So like if Mallory takes significant steps forward, then Granson becomes expendable. But Granson's contract's guaranteed. He's still on his rookie deal right now. So what's the point of letting him go? You know? Ogletree, Woods, who knows what Woods is going to be after missing an entire year because his hamstrings didn't work. Now he thinks he has a good idea about what happened. So you're optimistic, I keep using that word, optimistic that what happened last year does not happen again with Woods. But that's going to be an intriguing position. I think that Woods will get a lot of playing time. I think that Mo will get a lot of playing time. And the other guys are going to kind of mix in here and there into specific sets, specific situations about what they can do well. And if they keep all five, I wouldn't be surprised. But if they cut one of them, it would probably be Mallory and then put him on the practice squad.
I'm not sure that he stays with the franchise if he ends up on the practice squad. I think if any of these guys ends up on the practice squad, I think another team's going to snap him up because, I mean, it's a pretty strong group, or at least a potentially very strong group there. I think all those guys could do well with just about anything.
Maybe you can trade him for a safety and get someone who will actually play there somewhere this year. But anyway, those are 10 things to watch for as training camp is set to begin. And that is next Thursday out at Grand Park, the first practice of this July, soon to be August, for the Colts as they get set for the 2024 season. Read up all our work online at fox59.com, cbs4indy.com, and find the exact dates and times for all the camp practices there. Alongside Matt Adams, who is at Statomatty on Twitter, I'm Dave Griffiths at DaveG_sports. Read all of Mike Chappell's work online with our websites as well. And we'll see you next week when training camp begins on the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.